right. Hello, this is Mr. Music. I'm going to walk through using Google Classroom and in particular in this video Google Docs. So how to use Google Docs and Google Classroom and all the different Google stuff. So really the best way to think about it is Google Drive. I'm going to open it up. I clicked on the Chrome. I'm going to go to my account. But once you're logged in, you should see the same thing. I'm going to go to my Waffle, and I'm going to go to my Google Drive to start out with. Now, think of your Google Drive as the teacher hub. This is where you create everything that you want your students to do or see. Okay? The Google Classroom is mainly for students. Now, of course, you can use it as well, and it is useful for teachers, but mainly it's the hub for students. For you as the teacher, your main hub is Google Drive. That's where you're creating everything, okay? Anything that you want your students to see. And you always want to create something first, okay? So, for example, let's say I have a Google Doc that I want my students to maybe answer some questions, okay? Again, you can use Google Docs as a digital copy of something the students can mark up, like use highlighting tools in Google Docs, use comments as like post-it notes next to the doc so they could take notes. A lot of different ways you can use Google Docs. Think of Google Docs as it could be a page out of a textbook if you wanted it to be. It could be a sheet that has questions and the students fill in answers if you want it to be. It can be a lot of things, okay? So let's start with making a Google Doc, and I'm going to make mine so students can answer questions. So again, I opened Chrome, I went to my Waffle and opened my Google Drive, and now I'm just going to click New because I want to create something new, and I'm going to make a new Google Doc. So I click on that. It opens up a new window for me. And my recommendation, the first thing you do is give your document a name, because if you forget to do this, what you end up is having a lot of untitled documents in your Google Drive. So it makes it hard to find what you were looking for. Again, and also the title, make it something that you would probably search for later because the search tool in Google Drive is really good, but it bases it off what the title of your document is. So I'm just going to call this test doc, but again it could be reading homework or the title of the story you're reading and the questions 1 through 5, whatever it may be. Okay, so there's the title of my doc, and then down in the body of the paper, now I'm going to write out my questions. Now I do want to show you this as well really quickly. Under Tools right here, you do have the option to do voice typing. The only time I use this is when I want to use Google Docs as a textbook. So for example, our science books and our social studies books, the students aren't allowed to write directly in them, obviously, because they're not consumable. So if there's a section that I really want to do some close reading with, I will use voice typing, and I'll just read directly from the book and it'll type out everything from that section, and then now my students can use the tools to highlight and make comments, which think of comments as like post-it notes next to the page. Okay, but generally speaking, you wouldn't use the voice typing, but I'll show you how that works anyways. So we turn it on. I'm going to say, okay, this is question 1. Hold on. Click it off real quick. I usually put just number 1, and then when I'm ready to actually do the words, then I'll click it on. So there's number 1, and question 1 is, do you like fuzzy bunnies? Period. And it prints it all out for me. Notice I clicked it off because I wanted to start talking again without it. Oh, and I should have done question mark, so I'm just going to fix that real quick. Now, if you're using this for students to answer questions, after you type in or dictate a question, you want to insert a table. Okay. Now, this isn't required, but I highly recommend it because most students will end up trying to type. They may mess up the formatting of your paper that you created. They could do a lot of things, but the box gives them a clear space for them to write their answers in. Okay, so that's why I always do the question and then I insert a table, and I just do a one by one. I make it bigger if I expect the students to write more, and smaller if I expect the students to write less, because if you leave it default and you want them to write a paragraph, they will not keep writing, even though the box will automatically get bigger. You can see the box gets bigger for them automatically, but students generally see a small box and they'll put a small answer. So if I want the students to write more, I'll just make the box bigger myself before they get started. Okay. Now I'm ready to ask question 2. Are you feeling more comfortable with Google Drive? ? And I can turn it off. Again, you could just type these if you wanted. And I'm going to insert another table. So now they have space to write. Okay. And I'm just going to have 2 questions, so I delete that. Now, occasionally I will also insert a header. You don't have to do this. This is just something I do. I'll insert a header and I'll usually put directions up here. Okay. Now, one thing that's nice about Google Drive, everything the students do on this document is automatically saved, so they can't lose anything. They can't lose their work, and it automatically collects their name. So you won't have that problem of students forgetting to put their name on it, because they don't have to put their name on it. It will automatically collect their name because they're signed in. Okay, so you may want to put directions up here. Sometimes I'll do that. But anyway, so now our document is done. Let's say we're finished with our document. Now, how do we get this document to students? Okay, I'm going to exit out of this. Now, the next step is I want to go to Google Classroom. Okay, so I have a quick link. I don't know where it may be on your computer, but you want to go to Google Classroom. I got to switch. You won't have to switch as long as you're logged in as yourself. Now, here are my Google Classrooms set up. Now, again, if you don't have a Google Classroom set up, you're going to want to watch a different video first. Okay, so my classroom is already set up. I click on my classroom. And here's some of the things I have in my classroom. But to add something, so this is the Student Hub. This is where the students go. I do not recommend you telling your students to go into their Google Drive to create things. It just makes more steps for them to follow, and you want it to focus on the actual content of the lesson and not necessarily the technology and finding their way around. So they'll go to Google Classroom, and there's 3 tabs here. Stream. Your stream is where you put everything. This is where I put everything I want my students to do. I'll put homework here. I'll put announcements here. I'll put videos here that I want my students to watch. Things like that. Students, and if the student is looking at it, I think it says classmates if a student is logged in. But they won't. You just tell them you don't need to go here ever. There's no reason for them to go here. And then the About tab. The About tab I use for websites that we may go to often. For example, 10 marks, AR tests. I'll just put links to those on About. Again, not required though. And I'll go over that in a later video. But let's go back to the stream. Okay, so I had that test doc where I had a couple questions. I want my students to get that document and answer those questions. So I want to add something to my stream. So I come down here to the plus sign, I hit plus, and I have a few options. Now, I have never used this. I've used this once. I always use these two. Reuse post, I don't even know what it does. I've never used it. Create questions is exactly what it sounds like. It's where you create a question and the students reply right on the stream. It's not an actual document. But this is good for class discussion, not so good if you want to take something as a grade or as a test. Create assignment. Now, if you're asking your students to answer questions, I almost always recommend you make it an assignment. Announcements are good if you're going to post like a video for the students to watch, or I post the homework daily. That would be an announcement as well. But since I want the students to fill something out, it's an assignment. So I click assignment, I give it a title, and again, usually I just give it the same title that my document had. You can put in instructions if you want. I rarely do, but you can. You can change the due date, or you can have no due date, your choice. And if you want, you can see there is also available, you can have time, when it's the time it's due as well if you want. So again, those are personal choices though. Now, test doc is what I want to give them. You have a few options to get things, okay? One is attach a file. So if you have a I usually use this if I have videos, if I don't want my students going on YouTube, but I do have a video I want them to watch, I'll save it to my computer and attach the file. But 99% of the time you're going to be using Google Drive, this little, the little Drive emblem. And because you've already created something in Drive, now you want to grab that thing that you created. So I click on Drive, it opens up, and you can see there's my test doc that I made earlier. I just double click on that, and there's the test doc. Now this is critical. Right here it says students can view file. There's a little arrow down, meaning there's more options here. So if I click on that, you can see I have students can view the file, students can edit the file, or make a copy for each student. Again, 95% of the time I'm using make a copy for each student. That's because it's as if you made a copy like you would normally on the printer, where you want to hand one out to everybody and everybody's writing on their own. So most of the time that's what you're going to want to do, because you want each student to turn in their own. Now occasionally you may use students can edit file if you want all the students collaboratively working on a particular document or slides. And then view file, that's if you just want them, maybe you have some reading that you want them to do, maybe you found an article online and you just want them to read the document, then you would just say students can view it, and then you post it on there so they can look at it and read the document. But again, 95% of the time you're going to use make a copy for each student, and this is critical. If you don't do this, all the students are going to be writing, filling in answers on the exact same piece of paper, and you don't want that, or the same document. So make sure you come down here to make a copy for each student. Okay, we click that, and then we hit assign. It'll do some thinking, and there it is. So when the students log in, they'll see the stream. Everything will look exactly the same, except they won't. It'll say classmates here instead. But if they go to their stream, they're going to see this. They won't see done and not done, but they'll be able to click right on the image. Now this is what the students would do, and then they would see this. So now, again, it still says answers because I typed that in originally, but if you were doing it in a real situation, obviously it wouldn't say anything there. But now the students can come in here, type in their answer, and then for the students, again, this is slightly different for the students. Up here, the students will have a button that says turn in. And so when they're finished with this, they'll click turn in. And then I'm going to jump back over here to Classroom, so I'm going to click on this tab. And then as soon as they click turn in on your screen as the teacher, it will mark done. So let me show you one that's already been done like that. So the spelling test, 20 of my students have finished it. I still have 2 that need to take it. But if now I can click and I can see, okay, who's not finished with their spelling test. I click on not done, and it gives me those 2 students that are not finished with their spelling test. Okay. Now, a lot of other things you can do within this. Let me show you another one real quick. Let me see if I have a document. Okay, yeah, so here's a document. I click on the done. Now, if I want to, I can go in and see these actual papers. So I can click on Maddie's, for example, and I can go in and see exactly what she's turned in, okay, what she's done. So I asked him on this to give this student some notes on what they can do. So she highlighted, clicked the comments, and made some notes. Okay. Now once I've taken a look at it, if I want, I can even go on and give it a grade. Okay, and then you return it to the student. But let's not get into the grading option just yet. That's a little advanced. I think if you understand how to create the document and get it in front of your students in Google Classroom, I think that is a good first step. Once you feel comfortable doing that a few times, then do some assignments that you may want to grade, and I'll have some videos available for that as well. But when you're starting out with Google Classroom and Google Drive and all of that, what I did and what I recommend to you, if you're just starting out, do some things that you're not worried about grading, that you don't plan on grading, because it's going to be practice for you and for the students. So it takes a little bit of pressure off of you, and it gives you a chance to practice the program. And then once you get more advanced, then you can worry about doing things like grading and returning the assignments to them. But at first, I would not worry about that. All right, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next video.